If you want an ignorant, violent generation, yeah, make the budget cuts on the education. And when it blows up in your face, what do you think is gonna happen? Making prediction that America is going to get dumber and dumber because America doesn't appreciate teachers. People in the public don't appreciate the role that teachers have, their teacher career, the teacher occupation. And I've seen a lot of videos of teachers quitting in the last 2 years, 11 months, 6 months. And then the fact that there are now schools are cutting based on their budget. I mean, I'm a preschool teacher, and right now I'm actually going through education in order to be certified in Washington State, because Washington State is requiring support teachers, all kind of teaching occupations, professionals, if you're dealing with children, to be certified. So it's just like a state requirement right now. I'm making this video because I'm making it as a statement for action that we are literally abandoning our children. And we are a country that says children are our future. There are certain individuals that see that emphasis on certain like population control and that we need to overpopulate because the deprivation of, there's also people don't want to have kids anymore because like millennials, because I don't know, childhood trauma. Okay, boomer. Like, there have been statements from like the Tesla owner, I forget his name, saying like, we need to make more babies as a nation, as a country. And I feel like we're like going back in time because we're trying to place women back in the role of like, oh, you're only a product to make babies. I'm making a prediction right now that that's where our nation is going, that's where our country is going, based off public opinions that people have made. There have been political or public people that have said children are our future. If children are your future, then why are you making budget cuts? Why aren't you making the education system the main goal so that children are supported and they're given the education? Because the videos I'm seeing in public on YouTube from teachers quitting because they're burnt out, because I think if you're making budget cuts as a nation, education shouldn't be where you make the budget cuts. You need to look at other sources of where you need to make the budget cuts. Like as a school system, if we're making budget cuts and cutting down teachers, and so then they're overwhelmed because you're putting things onto them that wasn't their role in the first place, because you had to fire so many people, and now you have to place certain job roles to teachers that wasn't role in their first place. So what I'm seeing for the future is, from what the videos I've seen, there's going to be budget cuts in Washington State. I have an uncle who is a math teacher in California, and he said there's also budget cuts in his state in the school system. And so I feel like our country doesn't place an importance on education. It doesn't place an importance on educating our children. So the future generation is going to be dumb. The future generation isn't going to be educated because the education system we are creating, we're making budget cuts on it. And in that way, we're sacrificing the future children's education. We're sacrificing their future, and we're not teaching them anything. Teachers in like high school, middle schools, even kindergarten, are not able to provide the teaching curriculum, because what the children need is actually a foundation for emotional stability. And in order to get that emotional stability, the parents need to fucking wake up, because children are not learning because we're building a system where children believe they can act however they want. They can abuse a teacher, they can abuse authority. And it's not about like creating a hierarchy, but it's like, so you're abandoning the children because you're not in the school system. A teacher is trying to create consequences for the child. And how do consequences help a child grow? If a child throws a chair at a teacher and you give them a lollipop or you just rub their back, you're actually training them, you're teaching them that violence is okay. So that is going in coercion with our country, America, that we are training violent beings in the school system. We're training violent beings in which we're pacifying them and thinking like, oh, violence is the answer. Because if you give a child a lollipop, when through a violent action, they throw a chair at a teacher, you give them a lollipop, that reinforces that action. You're making budget cuts on the education system in America, which is limiting the child's intellect. It's limiting the child's education about the knowledge outside of their own perspective of the world, of what they experience every day in their own homes, in the grocery store. How are they going to learn? Ignorance is the culprit to repeating history. And look at the history of the world. So if America becomes just a country that's led by another tyrant, by another fascist, you can look at the budget cuts that we have made to the actual foundation of our system, which is children are our future. And if we make those cuts to help them grow, to help them expand as human beings, you are actively making a choice to abandon the generation. And I feel we are going to go extinct, because if we are making choices from a very individualistic, narcissistic society where we teach our children that it's okay to be violent towards teachers, even when they're just saying, can you please grab your book? And just because a child doesn't want to grab their book, that doesn't equal throwing a chair across the teacher. That shouldn't be the child's first thought. This makes me scared for our future. And this isn't to blame for the children. This is to blame for the foundation that we have created for our children, that we are actively creating for our children by cutting their education and not giving them the same opportunities that we have been given in order to grow, in order to flourish, in order to be leaders of the world, in order to be phenomenon people. It shouldn't be the school system that we cut first. Basically, I think America is going to be dumb. I think America is going to be the dumbest country in the world, because right now, systematically, in every state, we're making budget cuts, which means teachers are being let go, teachers are quitting because they are then forced to take on the system, fire those teachers. So now those jobs of that teacher that was fired has to go to someone to make the system still function. And then teachers quit because they're overwhelmed, and then you wonder, why is there a teacher shortage? Well, you're making budget cuts on the wrong thing. If you want an ignorant, violent generation, yeah, make the budget cuts on the education. Then when it blows up in your face, what do you think is gonna happen? Well, look at history. Ignorance. The best example of ignorance and violence. Lots of examples, but the one that comes to mind is Nazi Germany. And we are essentially, by cutting out the education for the future of our kids, we're essentially building up a foundation of creating ignorant, very violent individuals who can't control their emotions. And so they react with violence because teachers aren't provided, the classrooms aren't provided foundational resource to support these children, what their needs are. Once the education of a system falls apart, I think what we will see is the whole whole community of people fall apart. When people are not educated, they just follow their sheep. They don't think for themselves. They think for very military-based, violent-based, because military is based off of violence, out of physical product. That's all soldiers are seen as this physical product of violence and of acting from impulse, acting from automatic training. In order to have that automatic training, that person can't have any education, can't stand up to the system, so they have to be dumb, have to be ignorant. They cannot know what is outside, that there's more knowledge to be gained, so they don't learn anything, and all the knowledge they know is the propaganda that their leader tells them to brainwash them. The budget cuts of the school is much greater, a much greater detriment to the future of America.